Welcome back to the DTF Printing Mastery class. I'm your host Jay, the owner of Elegant Edits as well as Pop DTF. So in this one, we will basically be creating a gang sheet. And I'm sure you've heard of people saying that you need to gang your artwork, or you may be a person that prints transfers and you want to offer this as a service, but you don't know how. So look no further. So within Adobe Illustrator, the first thing we want to do is realize what size our film that we're printing on is. And for most people, that's going to be the A3 plus size or the 13-inch. And so what we want to do is create a new document. And based on what size your film is and how long your runs are going to be, that will determine the size that you need to create for the gang sheet. So if we were going to, let's just say our run was going to be 1 yard. I have mine set to inches. So the width of the film that we would be using would be 12.9. It's a 12.9 inch roll, or it's 13-inch roll, but you always want to go a little bit less. That way you don't get overspray in your printer if you're the one printing. And the yard would be 36 inches high. So next, just make sure that the resolution is set to 300 pixels per inch, which it usually is defaulted by that. You can also name it if you want to, but I usually name it as I export the file itself. So we can hit OK. We have our new document. So this represents the width as well as the length of the job that you will import into your RIP software. Now, the next thing we want to do is to add our artwork. So it will be up to the customer to actually submit those files. Now, you can have them submit them at scale. I would recommend this because if they don't submit the files at scale, you can be potentially blamed for printing the wrong size. So I would say to leave that up to the customer or charge them a separate fee in order for you to resize their images. That's just a side note there. So we can go to File and Place. And we are going to select our images that the customer has sent us. Now, you can also start by using the layers. So let me explain the layers also so that I'm being thorough. So in the last module, we went to Window and we selected our different windows. So this has created the first layer, but we can't see what's behind here, but I'm sure there's some white print in here somewhere. So we want to click here to create a brand new layer. It has generated this new layer above, and how these layers work are just as you thought in the real world. If you just took a stack of sheet of paper, the bottom layer won't be visible because it's the bottom layer is only visible by what the layer above it is revealed to allow. So what we want to do is click and drag the layer that it just created and make this our bottommost layer. Now I like to use this layer as a background layer so that I can see what I'm doing. And you don't want to make it white and you don't want to make it black. So what I'll do is make sure that the fill color is selected. You could either double click this and change it that way, or you can simply click your swatches again from the window that we selected to be visible in our panel, and you can select it that way. Now that the fill color selected, we can click on our rectangle tool, and we're going to start from the topmost corner and just drag this down the length of the artboard. Now this is good because I made a mistake, and that's okay. What I just did was I click and I drug the layer down, but I put it on the same layer as where the image is held. Now these little arrows actually collapse and expand the different options on the menu. But since this is selected, if this happens to you, all you need to do is you can go to edit and cut, or you can use the keyboard command Control and X. So Control X. So we've now cut this. Make sure our new layer is selected. That's below the artwork. And we can hit Control B to paste them back. If you hit Control V, it may or may not paste it into place. Now, what we also need to do is lock this layer, and we do that by selecting this empty space here, and this will actually make it to where we can't manipulate this at all, the background layer. If this weren't here, we may be selecting the Inspire and we wouldn't be able to select that. Now, there are some invisible pixels here. This isn't cropped well, so what you could actually do is, if we wanted to, we can create a clipping mask around this, but for the sake of the video, well, no, I'll actually do that. So let's go ahead, and on this layer, we will select the rectangle tool again, and we can select just outside these bounds and create a rectangle. And we can change this fill color to the outline color if we wanted to. And then we want to hit V on the keyboard, which would send us to the selection tool. And we can select both of these. Now we have both of these shapes here. And we can hit Control 7 on the keyboard, which is basically going to create a mask. If you don't want to do that keyboard command, just go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And what this has now done has made it to where if I click above this, it won't select the selection unless I click it, and it kept it inside of these bounds. And I can actually collapse this menu, go into the clipping mask if I wanted to, and then select this if I wanted to just adjust this mask here. You won't have to do this all the time. I didn't crop these images the way I should have before this, but that's okay. I just want to tackle problems and issues on the fly as I create these modules, just as you would do in the field. So we would select this, and based on the size for the width and the height that this needs to be for use with the t-shirt, we can hold shift. We can click and drag and hold shift to adjust this for a logo, a pocket logo size graphic. And you can also, again, I'm pressing the keyboard for the hand tool, or you can come down here and press the hand tool and move up and down this artboard. Hit the V key or the direct selection tool or the selection tool to slide this up. You can hold shift to keep everything aligned if you don't want it moving around. The next step would be to rotate this, because we would get more prints if we spread them out. Now we have two ways of actually duplicating this if they needed, let's say, 8 copies of this. What we could do is we could click and hold, and then hold Alt and Shift together and simply drag this over. Now you could actually release the mouse, click and hold again, Alt and Shift, and you can do this to slide it over and to basically duplicate this again. We may run out of space here. So we can actually click and drag and highlight everything and use the keyboard arrows to move this over. And that would actually be perfect. And this is another reason why I choose to create the artboard slightly smaller than the sheet itself, so that we don't have overspray. So if I didn't want to do it this way, what I could also do is do one action one time So we would click and hold Alt and Shift and let Alt and Shift go. Now, a little trick here is we can hit Control D on the keyboard, and what that is the function for repeat. So this would actually do this for you. So let's say we needed 12 of these. We can take our selection tool, highlight everything, drag it down, hold Shift, Alt and Shift, and then you could hit Control D. And you could do this to your heart's content if you needed to do that. So we're zooming out with the Z on the keyboard or the zoom tool, and you can Alt click. And again, I'm being redundant with these keyboard commands as well as the selections so that you can familiarize yourself with it. So there's a point in the repetition. So let's say they only needed, oh, we said 8 before. So we can do that. Highlight everything, Alt and Shift, drag it down. Now we're ready for our next image. File and place, and wherever the images are stored, we can go to the next image. Now let's say this were a full chest graphic, and they sent the artwork exactly at scale. What we could do is click and hold Shift, and you'll see a center line where it says intersect, the green line in the middle of the document, and granted the artwork is cropped to the edges, you should be fine in terms of the transfer being centered, the design being centered for the transfer. They needed 2 copies of this. You could slide this down, and if you wanted to, you could take this image and fit these on there. If you're printing for yourself, you can see where you can put more designs in if you wanted to. That's just if you wanted to do that. But once you're done, you can remove or hide this layer. You can press the I, and then we can go back to our artboard tool, and we can just click the bottom and drag this up to move the bounds of the artboard closer to where the design stops. If you do not do this, your printer will actually print blank space and waste film. So we always want to get this as closely cropped as possible. And you can just hit Escape on the keyboard. You can toggle this on and off. And again, be sure to hide this layer or it will actually print green DTF ink there. So the next thing to do for this gang sheet would be to actually save this. So we'll go to File and Export instead of Save, because if you save it, it'll save it as a vector. When you export, it would do it as a raster image. So we want to just name this gang sheet 1 or whatever you want to name it. Make sure we have the PNG option selected, and we want to hit Use Artboards. And what this will do is clip it to the outer bounds that we've selected. That way it doesn't make the gang sheet wider or smaller. It will print it at the dimensions that we've preset within the artboard itself. So you want to hit Use Artboards. After you name it, make sure it's a PNG. If it's a JPEG, it will not maintain that transparent background. So you would have a white background. So make sure it's a PNG file, and you're going to save. And at the next menu, again, in one of the first modules, we talked about the resolution. Make sure we export this at 300 pixels per inch, which is the standard, the basic standard for printed media. Hit OK. And within these modules, we will actually be covering AcroRip as well. So I may as well go ahead and show you what this would look like if we were to import this. So what we would do, if you had AcroRip, is just right click, open. and you can go to your folder, and here's our gang sheet with a transparent background. Then all we would need to do is mirror, and notice how everything is neat because we saved the files this way, and we also adjusted our template within AcroRip to suit the exact dimensions of the film, the DTF film that we're using. So we will actually touch on AcroRip. That'll be in a future module, and that is how you prepare a gang sheet within AcroRip. Now, after you export, you also want to hit Control S to save, or Control Shift S, or you can just simply go to File and Save, or File and Save As. And we do want to save a copy of this vector file so that if the customer wants to have you print more shirts or more transfers at a later date, you have the actual vector file to move things around at the exact scale that you did it before, so that you don't have to rely on that raster image that you exported. So we can save this as gang sheet, or you can put the client's name if you wanted to, and then we can save this as an AI file or PDF, EPS, or whichever you choose to do, whichever you choose to save it as. And it's done. I hope this video has benefited you in some way. Thank you for being a member of the DTF Printing Mastery class. I'm your host, Jay, and we'll see you in the next one.